Good morning. I am Steve Weber. Welcome to the American Gumption Morning Show. We are broadcasting on the American Gumption YouTube channel, Facebook page, and also on Spiritual Communities Network and Spirituality Gone Wild. So wherever you're tuning in, we welcome you, whether you're watching it live or on a replay. Alrighty, so today is show number 190. It's Thursday, June 17th. And I have a very special guest, Keeva Dagg is going to join us. I've never met Keeva before. That's a unique name and special for me. But I met this special young lady about a week or so ago, and she was a bright, shining light, and she is gracious enough to come join us this morning, and she's going to talk about elemental medicine. And what is elemental medicine? It's essentially the elements of earth, air, fire, and water. And so we'll get into that, and she'll explain how she got there, how she figured all this out, and it's going to be a fun conversation. She's a delightful young lady, and I'm looking forward to this conversation. Alrighty, and my monologue is going to be on elemental knowing. And I had my own experience. I've been on my journey of awakening for the last 10 years, and having read and understood what Keeva is doing, I'm going to compare some of the things that I've discovered kind of independently or with other guides and other teachers, but not necessarily connecting them to the elements of earth, air, fire, and water as Keeva does. And so I'll just share that, a little bit of my own journey. And these are all stories that you've heard before, so I'll just sort of give the quick version of them, but connect them to those 4 different elements. All righty. So before we get into the monologue and then welcoming Keeva in a few minutes, let's just go ahead and tell you what's going to happen the next couple of shows. So tomorrow, I will be doing a broadcast, and Darlene Ondi will be joining us from Canada, and she is a freedom fighter. And so she is someone who has committed the last year of her life to really protecting the sovereign liberties that Canadians have. And so, this last year has been one of massive disruption and changes. And she'll tell us about what she's doing to make sure that people continue to enjoy the freedoms that they've enjoyed for all these many years. Alrighty. So, and then next Tuesday, Denise Flood will be joining us, and she's going to talk about tapping. And then on Friday, Gwen Peterson will be with us, and we're going to do a deep dive into meditation, specifically, what her techniques for meditation are. And then I'll have a show on Wednesday and Thursday next week. And do not plan to have a show on Monday. I'll be taking care of some other business. So that's what's happening. So, all righty. Well, let's go ahead and jump into the monologue. Let's see here. There we go. We'll jump into, whoops, I don't want to do that. There it is. There we go. Yeah, the monologue, elemental knowing. And again, this is essentially, these are some of the things that I know or I've learned about myself over the last, decade as I've done my awakening and consciousness and living more in the present moment. But it really ties back with what Keeva is going to talk about in terms of the elements, what the 4 elements are is the earth, air, fire, and water. All righty. So I was familiar with the elements. Another friend of the show, she has a way of testing you to figure out which of the elements you are and how you connect with your life and with your space. And so she uses that. But I've also known indigenous people it's been around for centuries and, maybe millennium. It's Eastern philosophy and, the different elements and connecting with it. So I don't know a whole lot about it other than the fact that, I've learned about it the last few years and know that this is something that's been around. So it'll be real interesting as Keeva gets into it and talks. Maybe she'll tell us a little bit about how she got involved with it that way. The book and the movie Angels and Demons from the Da Vinci Code era. Tom Hanks acted in that, and he was the guy who the symbologist. And so anyway, the four elements were very prominent in that book, a movie Angels and Demons. And so I've like I said, I've certainly been familiar with this. Now, Keeva helped me understand through her readings and through her the program that I saw her teach last weekend, in a new modern way. And I reflected on the changes and the things I've learned over the years. Now I can see how they're connected with those different elements. Alrighty. So like I said, without even realizing it, I was using these elements in a way that she's talking about them, as I went and did my own discovery and awakening. So let's just jump into the examples of it. So in the first one, fire, I'm going to quote from Keeva's writings. I have taken on the challenge to release as many blocks as possible from my physical being. I have taken on the challenge to release as many blocks as possible from my physical being. I've talked about shedding, several times. I've had a guest on the show who talked about shedding. So we've talked about like releasing and getting rid of things. Now, a lot of it's been like from the physical sense, getting rid of stuff in my life. But there's also been there was very much a strong connection of not only releasing the stuff, but releasing the meaning behind the stuff. And that was the reason that I held on to it. And so releasing that, getting rid of things, I went through massive shedding, especially in the, 2, 3, 4 years ago when it really began. And I had been on my journey of awakening for the, previous 6, 7 years. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh my gosh, I got all this stuff I got to get rid of. So it was both emotional, and then physical stuff that I got rid of. So that was the shedding. And that's with fire. Fire is the idea of, you can incinerate, you can just poof, transform things from one state of being to another state of being, right? You throw a log or a piece of paper into the fire and, it turns into ash and it goes away. And so that whole idea of releasing and letting it go is one of the elements. Now, there's a whole lot more to fire, and I'm sure that Keeva will tell us more about that. All right, let's say air. Here's an example of air. And this is, again, her quote from her book. If we choose to live in the mind, two things occur. If we choose to live in the mind, two things occur. We miss out on the sensational pleasures of everyday life, and our internal guidance system loses its center point. Man, was I ever stuck. When I did my awakening, my initial aha back in 2009, I realized over the course of that first year or two that I was completely living my life for the last 30 years in my mind. I was a thinker. I was an overthinker. I had lost connection with my heart. Getting that to all break down and get back into the, into the sensational pleasures of everyday life was a struggle and a journey for me. I went through that whole process, and fortunately and then one of the quotes that I know not so long ago I learned about is the biggest distance is the 15 inches from your head to your heart. And so that's the hardest traveling distance. All right. And then along with air is breathing. And Keeva talks about that. Breathing is nourishment to the body. Like food and water, we need to inhale and exhale consistently to be alive. All emotions either flow through us or are stored in the body. Boy, when I was doing that shedding, I learned about the idea of how to release energy from my body and drink a lot of water and breathe, do a lot of deep breathing. And my own meditation practice was only beginning back at that time also. So the whole idea of that inhaling and exhaling, releases energy. And someone talked about not so long about smokers going out for a smoke break. And it's really a chance to deep breathe and relax and exercise. It's not necessarily the smoke that relaxes them. It's that breathing process. And so anyway, this whole idea of air moving is so important in a healthy body. All righty. Now, moving on to water. the first step to allowing in the messages from our body is to come to the neutral position where there is no good or bad sensations in the body, no good or bad sensations in the body. Now, I'm going to do a little bit of a jump between this right and wrong, good and bad, evil, goodness. Boy, I had been living my life in this very black and white world where everything was either good or bad, right or wrong. I was like a judgment machine in terms of always like putting things on either one side of the equation or the other side. And as the idea, I remember a friend, a coach to me back in 2009, 2010 said, imagine that there is no right or wrong or good or bad. Blew my mind. I was like, oh, I had been living my whole life with that judgment. And what Keeva talks about in the water portion is the first step in allowing our bodies to come to a neutral position. So we want to become a neutral position in our bodies, is that there is no good or bad sensations in the body. So imagine like sensations, what you're feeling, it doesn't have judgment in terms of good or bad or right or wrong. And she talks about, I think I'll leave her to say the quote that she used, but it's like, my goodness, it's, the body is like telling us things. It's telling us what's going on, and we need to learn to tune into that. Alrighty. And then she also talks about the journey is not about getting back to where you once were. The journey, we want to try to protect things in our lives. We want to hold on to what we liked or thought we had. And yet that journey of life is a constant movement. So you never get anywhere. You're always on your way, and learning to enjoy that process, being in the present moment. That was, again, a hard lesson for me. And of course, that's life lesson number 3 from the movie Forrest Gump that I've talked about hundreds of times here, is the fact that life is a journey, and there's just these little chapters that we go from one chapter to another, but we never actually get to a finish line, because it's the process, it's the journey along the way. Alrighty. And then she talks about the cycle of life and the moon and the ebb and flow of the days, the weeks, the months, the years. When I lived in Montana, I had a beautiful 10 years of being able to really see that cycle from season to season, from month to month, and go through that and get back in touch with that. So that was a wonderful time in terms of being closer to nature and being able to see the cycles of life, the way the sun would rise, earlier in the summer and set later in the summer, and then in the winter the days became shorter. I went through 10 seasons of that, and really where I was like, I wasn't living outdoors because I was living in a house, but it was like the house felt very connected to the outdoors, much more so than other places that I had lived. Alrighty. And then finally, the earth. Turning into your body takes practice and dedication, like building a relationship with a friend. Turning into your body, so learning about our body, takes practice and dedication. It's like building a relationship with a friend. And I'm going to equate that with self-love. I had to do a lot of forgiving. I had a lot of judgment about myself and things I had done and things I had to just become one who appreciated and was much more forgiving, and had to become conscious of the way that I talked to myself, the shaming and the guilting, and thinking that was going to help me, right? Thinking that if I, browbeat myself enough into submission, I was going to become a better person. And really what I wasn't doing was I wasn't being very kind to myself. So I had to learn to build that relationship with myself, with my body, like I was building it with a friend. And, as somebody one time said, would you ever talk to would you ever talk to another person the way the way your thoughts talk to you? And once you start thinking about that and becoming aware of it, my goodness, it was a real eye opener. And the concept of surrendering, in certainly in 12-step programs, they talked about surrendering, and in the religions, they talk about surrendering, giving your troubles up to a God. So that whole idea of surrendering, ultimately came to mean something to me beyond just, what it meant, from a spiritual or from a religious point of view, I should say. And really it was about learning to observe myself with the eyes of a child rather than the eyes of a critic. I love this quote. Observe myself with the eyes of a child rather than the eyes of a critic. Yeah, we, children are innocent and fun and happy and joyful, and adults become critical. And I had become very critical. So, and then that all is back with the earth. So that's the four elements. The fire, to be able to get rid of and transform things. The air, the breathing in, the freshness, the ventilation. The water, representing that cycle of life and the newness and the movement of water to keep it fresh. And then finally the earth. Alrighty. Well, I stole a little bit of Keeva's thunder with that, with that monologue on elemental knowing, but I just wanted to compare it with some of the things that a lot of the things that she talks about, or some of the things she talks about, and the way they related to the things that I discovered on my own over the last few years, and became, very much, part of my awakening and growth. And yet I never connected them directly with the elements of air, water, fire, and earth. And so, all right, with that, let's bring Keeva to the stage and welcome her. Let's see, there she is. Hello, Keeva. Good morning.
Good morning, Steve. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
Oh, that was great. I loved all of that. It was so amazing to hear your personal journey and all that you've been through. What a journey.
Yeah, it's been fun. And I loved when I read, some of the writings on your website and about what you've been doing, because I just never connected the dots between, those were things that I was doing, but I never thought of them as the elements, that you're going to talk about. So I'm really anxious to let you have center stage here and share with us, what you've, how your whole journey came to be, and, where you're going with this, because, you're an exciting path. So welcome.
Thank you. Well, that has to be one of my favorite things about it, to be honest, is that it's not really learning anything new. People do come and it's kind of, there's a series of aha moments than there is of, oh, I need to write this down and remember what you're saying. And I feel that is what people are craving at the moment. And it was what I was craving. I read many books and did lots of courses, and I wanted to figure out what I could tune into in myself. And so when I started working with the elements, I started to get that response from people like, oh, that makes sense. And oh, that makes sense. So yeah,
all right.
That is my favorite thing.
Well, no. So here is, we have two things that we have to do, kind of housekeeping things, to get us started. And so the first thing is I want to read a bio that I've created that'll just tell people a little bit about who you are, kind of tee things up and add a little more background to what you've been doing. And then I have a song that I play, which is called the First Time Guest Theme Welcoming Song. So it's like special for first time guests. So if you come back again, we can't play the song. This is like only a one-time deal.
Okay, so I'll soak it in.
All righty. Well, let me tell people who you are. I'm going to put you in the big screen so people can see you while I'm reading this. So Keeva Dagg connects people with their inner guidance system through elemental medicine. She believes we all can connect with our bodies, and that connection will open the door to the answers we seek in life. Now, these answers could be as simple as relieving some of your aches and pains, or as big as discovering your passion for this lifetime. Keeva uses elemental medicine as a way to perceive the world. It's a structure that is already present within us and our world all around us. By building an awareness of this, or to this, it is in a sense coming home to oneself. Fire, air, earth, and water medicine are all present within the body. Tapping into this wisdom will help you understand and see practical steps that you can take in the here and now and become better aligned with yourself. And her website, which is right below us, is called Elemental Empress Medicine, www.elemental Empress Medicine. And really what it is you're talking about elemental wisdom, and I love this. So Keeva Dagg, welcome to the American Gumption Morning Show. This is going to be a fun conversation. Are you ready for that song?
Super ready, yes.
Let's do it. Have you ever had a marching band welcome you to a broadcast before, Keeva?
I can't say I have, Steve.
All right.
That was great.
Well, welcome. We're grateful that you're here joining us, and it's American Gumption, but today we might want to call it Global Gumption because you are a citizen of the world. Why don't you, before we get started into the elemental medicine and the elements, tell people I know where you're from, but where are you from, and where have you traveled, and where are you currently today? You've been in your young life, you haven't stayed close to home, or at least you've expanded your wings and flown around.
Yeah, so it's been an incredible teacher. I decided to start to travel. I went to India when I was in my teenage years, and then I lived in Indonesia for a while. I lived in South Africa, and then I went back to Dublin, where I'm from. I'm Irish, even though I don't look Irish or sound Irish, so that's usually people's last guess for where I'm from. And then I moved over here to Costa Rica, where I am right now. So.
Well, wonderful. Yeah, Costa Rica is pretty nice. You're not too far from the ocean right now, from what I understand.
Yes, I can see it from where I am sitting. I never ventured too far. I think that's part of being Irish, is like I got so used to it as a child, being on an island, that it's disorientating not to be near it now. So.
Why is it that, because when I first met you, I didn't pick up that you were Irish. Why is it that you don't have maybe a stronger Irish brogue or accent? How is it that you became a citizen of the world?
Well, I think with the accent, I think I picked it up from my dad, that he was really good at mimicking them, so that then they start to connect with you more easily because they think that you are from where they're from. So I think I started to do that as I was traveling naturally in different places. And then, it just became this melting pot of an accent. So.
All righty. Well, very good. I had a similar thing. I was born on the East Coast of the U.S., and then I went to California, and I ended up getting my teeth straightened out. I had to wear an appliance, and I couldn't speak like fast with that appliance that I wore, and it really did change my accent, which was actually kind of neutralized things a little bit. So there you go. All righty. Well, here, so I want to read a quote, and this is from some of the things you've written. Over the past year of my life, I have stepped into my passion and manifested it as a career. I chose my light. It shines through my face like a torch these days. When I met you, I saw you glowing, and I was like, oh my gosh, who is this girl? You really are glowing, and you have stepped into your light. How did that come to be? You went on this kind of journey of traveling around, but when was it that you realized, how did you get introduced to the elements? When did it realize that it could help you personally? And then how did it become that you're going to, help others and become this teacher that you are today?
That's a big question.
Yeah, so take it away.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. So I did not consciously seek out the elements in any shape. It wasn't like my plan to start working with the elements. It was kind of almost, I want to say, random. And because I didn't have an agenda when I was traveling, I just followed my intuition wherever it was calling me to go. And I met different people. I studied online, so I was able to just go with the flow. And as I went with the flow, I started to get into community living. I was in a community in South Africa that used the elements, going into the physical and the spiritual sides of the elements. So that was probably my most formal introduction to it. And then also I was interested in shamanism, which also uses the elements to go in between the two worlds. So I found it quite interesting. Like, it just intrigued me at the time, I guess, is how I could put it. And I also did dream weaving with women, which is based off of the elements as well, and helping women to transform and express themselves through moving through the elements of fire, air, earth, and water. So I created my business, which was a women's health business originally. And I was, there was PowerPoints, it was super structured, and I wasn't getting anywhere with it. It was just this tedious task that I was trying to construct, because that's what I thought being a businesswoman was, being an entrepreneur was. And so I hired a life coach, and she was just incredible. So we moved through 8 sessions together, and I think around session 5, it was like, oh my goodness, I'm going to have to dissolve everything I just created. I had like YouTube channels and business, and I was devastated. I was like, this is horrendous. But it really was for the best. I dissolved everything I had created, and she helped me to see that the elements were what was calling me, essentially, through our coaching sessions. And so then I started to think about the elements. I didn't build a web page. I didn't build anything. I went onto LinkedIn and I offered free sessions to people, and I completely surrendered. That was the changing point of when this light actually could come through. Like, it was trying to come through, but it was like, until I just let go of everything and surrendered, it wasn't going to actually show itself. So I hopped on the phone with people, terrifying moments, I cannot tell you. And I was like, okay, where are we going to go with this? I have no idea. And that's when I saw myself, and people started giving me testimonials. They started to say these things to me, and I was like, oh my goodness, this is crazy. I love this. And so I kept doing that just to really hone in on my channel and focusing on that. No webpage, no social media, just me one-on-one with people. That was my focus. And then a couple of weeks later, I made the webpage, and that was when I saw that my light was really shining, because the webpage came through like a gem. You know, it was perfect expression of what I was trying to do. And from that, I got such a positive response from people. They were like, I really resonate with your energy, was the main thing people were saying. And then people were like, yeah, do you want to come on a podcast, or do you want to do this or that? Because they were starting to see the real me through it. And from there, I continued building. So.
Wow, I talked in my monologue a little bit about how I was completely head-based and stuck in my head thinking about like, oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And, to kind of paraphrase what you just said, it got me nowhere, and so it's been so it's wonderful that you surrendered much more easily than some of us who get a little more set in our, like it's going to be this way or it's going to be that way. And, you try to brute force something to happen and it just doesn't happen. So I love that, you just surrendered it and it's working. And it's supposed to be easy. We'll get into the law of attraction a little bit, but if you're just going with the flow, it works a heck of a lot easier than if you're trying to force things to happen.
Yeah. And so the analogy that I use for people now, because I come across other people that are struggling to birth their creations into the world, struggling to bring their light into the world. And the analogy that I use, which works for men and women, it's the same kind of energy, but obviously women sometimes can get it a bit easier, is around birth. So I also work as a doula with birthing, and I worked in a maternity hospital in Cape Town, and it was such vivid inspiration for this work as well, because obviously birthing is water medicine and earth medicine, and that was the analogy that got me to understand what I was doing wrong, in a sense, is that I was in the mind, I was trying to control it, and that is what women do just before they give birth. They try and like get the music perfect and make sure they have the right doula and their partner has to do exactly this and that. But really, when they actually give birth, they just have to completely surrender, and they are in no way in control. They have to trust their body, and they go completely into the earth. And this is what I was being called to do with my business. It was like, you need to completely surrender. You need to just give birth and stop trying to control the room. So that really helped me, because like that is it. And then also, it's going to be a challenge. Like giving birth is always a challenge. And with babies, obviously, the baby's got to come out. So you go through it one way or another. But with businesses and creations, entrepreneurship, you can stop. Like, you don't actually have to give birth. You can give up halfway and just like be like, nah, never mind. So, yeah.
I as I read, your writings, you certainly, it's kind of geared more, to women, and yet at the same time, I was trying to think of, from a man's point of view, some of these principles are similar. Obviously, the birthing process is very unique to women, but the concept of it is not something that's so foreign. And so anyway, we'll try to make it work for both men and women, this conversation, but understanding that, you're bringing the feminine perspective, the divine feminine. And I love that. I think it's great. So before we get into the specifics of each one, maybe you'd like to kind of just like introduce people to like the four different elements, and kind of, before we dive too deeply into each one, just give a quick recap of all of them and how you see them, working together and how they are uniquely different.
Great. Yeah, it's a great question. And that is exactly how it works, in a sense that they all have their individual characteristics, but the beauty is actually that they're all interacting with each other. So within my blog and within my writing, within the book that you're mentioning, Elemental Wisdom, I do separate them to be able to understand them. So with fire, fire is super powerful. It's around creativity, and if we're looking at the sort of intangible concepts, creativity, passion for life, and we can see that passion, how much we are expressing our creativity by our metabolism in our body, how much heat we're feeling in the body. And so when we mirror these two together, the physical heat in the body and the creativity, and we're struggling with creativity, then we can think, okay, maybe I'll do some exercise, I'll start sweating, I'll start to build up the heat in the body, and these kinds of things can support using the elements. So fire, I also really enjoy for ancestry and communicating with other realms that's more shamanic. And I find that even if one doesn't believe or use those kinds of things, it's really great just to know that if you have candle lights around your home and things like that, it can just provide a different inspiration for you. And fire is really about dreaming, being able to breathe into your dreams. And then we have air. Air is a powerful one for everyone at the moment, with masks, with COVID being a lung viral infection. So there is a big cleansing that is happening within the lung space. And this is really where we're seeing the mind coming into the body. So when I do body scans with people, I can feel where in the body the blockage is. And a lot of people stop just at the diaphragm and they won't go any further. And the reasoning for that is that if they start to breathe deeper, they're going to have to breathe into their trauma and the difficult emotions that they've been suppressing. So that's really where the lungs come in. It's like, can you expand and contract? And I use analogy of babies as well here, because and that just establishes really positive energetic flow and physical flow. So we can use the breath for endless things in that regard. And it increases the sensitivity so that you can move into water and earth as well. So with water, we have emotions, and you can see if people are holding emotions, they can look quite swollen, and a lot of feminine experiences as well, like birth, pregnancy, they're quite watery. And yeah, taking a different perspective on releasing water, like tears, and inviting those kinds of things in. It's really, with water, it's about invitation, because feminine energy, it's all about invitation. Masculine energy is more direct, and then feminine energy is more like, are you gonna wait to listen to me? So that's kind of where the emotions come in, inviting them in, allowing them to be expressed. And then we have earth, and earth is, the Empress archetype is earth. So I find myself to be quite an earthy person. It's quite like a mothery energy, which is my vibe. And because I feel like the earth saved me in so many ways, because I wanted to be in the air. I wanted to be in this kind of ethereal realm, this blissful state, meditative state. And my body reminded me, like, you are an earth being, get back down here. So I have learned lots of techniques to bring myself back down, just even simply by concentrating on my feet. And I am avid about what I eat food-wise, what I invite into my body, and all the whole digestive system. Just really, I find it so intriguing. And when we get in sync with our digestive system, our body can flow so beautifully. So yeah, that's an overview of the four. And just to note as well, the reason why I only work with those four, I know people work with different elements, and sometimes there's like ether and spirit and things like that, is because I work with the body and embodiment for people and helping people with that.
Yeah, I've heard it like 4 or 5 elements. Metal has been mentioned as another,
stone
one.
Is another one.
Stone, right. So, but anyway, love that you have the 4, and we'll just stick with that for now. That's funny. That's funny. Wow. So it's interesting you said about earth. And I think that in the testing that I've kind of done, and the archetypes that have shown up, earth is where I definitely relate to too. So
yeah, I can see that. You're a very grounded person.
And yet we have all of the elements. It's not like we're like we're an earth person. It's just like one is a little bit stronger than the other, and and it's kind of good for us earth people, or for if you're a fire person, it's like what's your it's what your superpower kind of one. But the other ones, you need to have them in some kind of a balance too. And you have them as a balance to begin with. It's like, not like, you have all of one and none of the other. But just that awareness and thinking about it helps to balance one's, life, and gives you something to think about.
Yeah, exactly. And that's my favorite question as well. Like when I start a session with someone new, I'll ask them, like, what is their favorite element? And then what is their least favorite element? And the reasoning for that is that once I establish like they're comfortable in an element, so maybe they're comfortable in earth, but they're not comfortable in air, then I coach on how to use the earth that you're comfortable with to expand into the air. So we can lean on them for sure. And it changes throughout your life as well. So yeah, awareness is the key for sure.
And as I read through your elements, there is a lot of cross, pollination or, there's like certain things that, it's almost like, well, wait a minute, is she talking about air there, or is she talking about, I had to like do some thinking about it. And
that's good. That means it's doing its job. It's making you think.
No, it's great. So, I love, so let's dive into, some of the elements a little bit more. The whole idea of fire is interesting, and it can be two different ways that I, as I read what you wrote about it, like it could be like this kind of internal combustion in terms of what you're passionate about, and yet it could also be like a way of releasing things that no longer are serving you. And the example I gave with the fire, with shedding, I went through a massive shedding of stuff, but I also had a great coach who pointed out that if I was going to shed this physical stuff, I needed to release all the emotional energy that was, along with it. And initially that didn't make sense to me, but boy, when I got into it, I am so grateful I went through that exercise, because, now I'm just left with memories and none of the actual energies that were connected with it all. So.
Oh, that is powerful. Yeah. And how awesome is that? I love to see that as essentially like everyone is given life experiences, but not everyone cultivates wisdom, because wisdom comes through that integration that you went through. So now you have those stories in your back pocket. You can even the really tough ones, you can laugh about them and you can share them as helpful stories for other people. So that's incredible.
What would be maybe a fire story from your own life as you went through this journey of like how you used fire to kind of heal either your physical self or your emotional health? Yeah,
fire is probably my least favored element in a sense. I think it's very powerful. I have a lot of respect for it, and I feel probably to answer that question, I would say that fire helps me to release my emotions, like what you're saying. Because I'm quite a watery person. I am emotionally sensitive and empathetic person. So I sometimes had a tendency to accumulate emotions from other people and just like take on their energy literally and hold it as water in my body. So when I started to tap into fire more, I was able to literally have more heat in the body and to burn that away. And the analogy that I use for this in regards to people who have edema or are retaining water for whatever reason is it's kind of like, if you have a damp campfire, you wet wood and it's smoking and you can't see anything. There's no dancing flames. It's not passionate. It's just kind of like, so you need to drain the water first, and then the fire will be able to naturally combust and naturally heat you up and inspire you and make you feel good about life. So yeah, I danced with the water, releasing the water, using the fire. And the most simple way that I use fire is really just burning things. So if I have a story that I have realized that I'm telling myself that is not serving my highest good or my passions in life, my purpose, I'll write it down and I'll read it to myself in a mirror and I'll burn it. And then I'll put the ashes into the earth. It's such a simple regime that I go through, and it is incredibly powerful to just affirm to the unconscious mind, because the unconscious mind's tough to consult with at times. So that's one channel that I found is just like, nope, I'm done with that. I'm going to let it go.
All righty. So a couple of comments. So Michelle Nilsson is a guest of the show, and she is a U.S. expat living in Ireland right now. But she just says she loves this, and I work with the elements also. Absolutely. And then Bettina is a former labor and delivery nurse from Seattle. So she's relating to your birthing of your business with the birthing process. And
oh wow.
Yeah. So it's these are all. People can relate to what you're talking about, and so it's great that we're having this conversation. So yeah, and the fire. When I lived in Montana for the 10 years, I had a wood stove, and I would just it would almost be like a meditation for me. In the winter months when I would have to, I used the wood stove to heat the place and not exclusively, but it was the nicest way to heat the house that I was living in. And when you would wake up and you'd get the fire going again, I mean, it was just so relaxing to sit there and just watch the fire. I loved it. So
did you get any good ideas from that time?
Oh yeah, I mean, it was it was very mesmerizing, and I didn't even realize it at the time, but it was part of a meditation process that was going on. So yeah, it was great. And another friend, she did the exact same thing that you did, where she would take. She was cleaning. She was the one who coached me through the whole shedding and the emotional releasing of the connection with the physical stuff that I had. And she would actually, like, she went through a bunch of old photos that just weren't able to carry around anymore. And maybe she digitized some, I don't know what but she ended up burning a lot of like things that we would call them like mementos and keepsakes, just because, who wants to carry all that stuff around with you, forever and ever. And, you can keep like a small amount of, anyway. So when I first heard she was burning it, I was like, wow, that's kind of like, it was like a ceremonial burning of it all. Anyway, so
yeah.
All righty. So let's move on to air. And I had a couple of ideas here from your book. Maybe I'll just introduce one, and then you can jump with it. Air breathing is nourishment for the body. Like food and water, we need to inhale and exhale consistently to be alive. I really appreciated, the way you wrote about that process of just like taking in air and releasing it and becoming conscious of it. And, through the meditation practice that I've developed, I've become more conscious of it. But just reading the way you wrote about it, I thought was very kind and generous. So thank you for that, and expand on it a little bit.
Yeah, it feeds back into what you said in the beginning. I don't know why air or breathing tends to be the time when people judge themselves the most. Like, they often don't want to tell me how they're breathing. They'll say like, oh yeah, like I'm getting my breath is deepening. And I'm like, it's okay where it's at. Just tell me what's going on in the breathing. And I don't know why that is. So I think taking that non-critical approach of just noticing, and there's huge power to that, of noticing how you're breathing when you're eating, how you're breathing when you're cooking food, or when you meet a certain person. And it gives an idea in a simple way that there are some things in life that you enjoy experiencing, and there are some things in life that you don't. So nothing wrong with that, but just noticing every time you meet that person, you stop breathing. Or every time for whatever reason, you stop breathing. So then you have the opportunity in your alone time. So the breathing really is like, you notice it in your external environment when you're going and you're interacting with people. And then you can take that into your private space. You can write about it. You can do breath work, and you can meditate with it to expand on it and to see what it is. It's not that you need to like take deep breaths and explode in a supermarket and feel it all in that moment. It's just like, take note, and this is your key to exploration. And the thing about breathing that is so beautiful for anyone on their journey is that you can choose when to stop. So you can choose how deep you go, or how, because with plant medicines and things like that, it's a little bit like it just pushes you in and you have to just go with it most of the time. Where breathing, it's like, actually, no, that was enough for today. I'm gonna stop it there. So
yeah, I've noticed in my own breathing, like we obviously just breathe without being conscious of it, and so we're going along. But the act of actually becoming conscious of the breath, that's when that's when things change. And so we obviously are not going to walk around all day long being conscious of our breathing, because we have all these other things that are going on in our lives. And yet, if we develop enough of a consciousness that we learn how to, use breathing, like in a difficult moment, like, okay, let's stop and take a deep breath, and let's, relax a little bit, or let's take a little walk and, just kind of refocus ourselves. That's what I was interpreting from what you are talking about in terms of how do we come using it to our advantage.
For sure. And there's a strong relationship there to notice that, if you are using shallow breath, you're affecting your digestive system. So it's mirroring itself in a sense that I don't want to take in life and then I struggle to digest life because there's not enough pressure going down to pump the whole digestive system. So noticing this relationship, and a lot of the time that digestive issues, digesting life, they can go back to childhood, where we just found it we didn't have enough coping mechanisms or enough skills to digest our life experiences. So in recognizing the relationship there, we can cultivate more skills to digest our life experiences. And from that, the breath comes more easily and we feel more safe to take those deep breaths.
Water is, I'm sensing you have a pretty strong connection with water, because I'm looking at my notes from the water portion of it, and you know, there's a lot here. So where do you want to go with water? Because there's several ideas there. So I'm just going to open it up to you and say, what do we want to talk a little bit more about water? Because that was a juicy chapter for you.
Oh yeah, I love water. I have to contain myself, because on the webpage it's like, I know if I get too much into one element, one section is just pumped with things. So, oh goodness, water. Yeah, I think if I was to pick my favorite thing about water, is it's taught me so much about the beauty and potential of darkness. You know, like the waters within the womb space is like, essentially it is dark, and essentially the same with going into the ocean, which I'm looking at right now. When you sink down deep enough, it's darkness, but it's still darkness. It's calm darkness. It's like a positive kind of holding. And I always remind myself of that. You know, I can have anchors in life, and the waves are always going to be going and flowing, but there's, in the body and in life, there's always that point of stillness, that centered point that I can come back to. So when I remember that, I feel like I can handle anything. So that's probably why I have such a strong relationship with water, because yeah, it anchors me in a strange way because it's so fluid.
Your favorite affirmation here, I'll just read it. I choose to see life as an infinite mystery rather than wishing it was easier or difficult or less difficult. I choose to see life as an infinite mystery rather than wishing it was easier or different. You know, what do you mean by that affirmation? Unpack it for us.
Okay, yeah. Well, with water is very helpful with that affirmation, because how I translate that in a sense is that the water element helps me to see that the world around me is a reflection of my soul light. So my soul light comes from inside of me, it shines out into the world, and it reflects off of everything. So that's water is reflective. And so when I take that perspective, it's not easy every day, very much not easy, but it's like, okay, this is a mystery. Like, I'm trying to observe myself. I'm trying to figure myself out all the time, and I'm seeing all these reflections. And that can be, if taking on the eyes of a child, it can be like an exploration journey. It can be a curious journey of, oh, now I see that reflection, and now I see that reflection. And if one takes it like that, then it flows much faster. So we don't get stuck on each of the reflections, like, oh, that was harsh, oh, that person's judging me, or it's just like, oh, that's interesting, I have that going on in me, I can now use fire to release that, etc., and you can move on. So it was a really profound shift for me as I was going through. There was two big chunks of my life where there was just intense lesson upon lesson upon lesson. And it was either I was going to feel like I was being pummeled on the ground, or I was going to find a chair, sit back, and say, that's interesting. And that sentence alone, like, instead of being like, this day is horrendous, it's just like, you know what? That is super interesting. And it just helps me to laugh. It helps me to think that it's funny and interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I've been tuning in a lot more to to what I say, but also to what I hear others around me say, and whether they're they're like taking it in as kind of a that's an interesting thing, or taking it in as like, gee, this like one little detail seems like it's being blown up into this big massive issue. And back to the lightness and the darkness, and you talked about a dark, safe place. That's interesting, because we're talking like light workers these days are like talking about putting light on what is our darkness of the world right now, and our crumbling institutions that we believed in and thought we could trust, but are realizing that, gee, this is maybe it's like this dark energy that's going on. That kind of dark energy is very different. People are talking about that, but that's very different than that darkness of the the deep depths of the ocean, or the darkness of the womb, where it's like kind of a safe place.
Yeah, it is it's kind of the same, and it's kind of different. And I feel it's kind of like soil. I don't know if this is going to translate or make sense, but this is just the way that my mind goes with it, is that, soil, it can be darkness, if you're in the soil, it's darkness. But that can just be kind of fermented piles of stuff. It doesn't have to be composted, fertile soil. So if we don't integrate our life experiences, they don't compost and make fertile soil for the future. They kind of just stagnate and putrefy. Like, they just cause harm in the body. They cause dis-ease as they sit there. So transforming those things and making it into fertile soil, it's like it's darkness, it's trauma, it's things that were hard, but we're just changing the energy, and we're going from a darkness that is harming us, a darkness that is like a hole in us, to a darkness that is holding us, and a darkness that is providing a future for ourselves. So this is the lesson of darkness for me, and the light is there as well. It's kind of like, this is the top and that's the bottom. And the light helps us. It gives us hope. It gives us joy. It's the sun. It's those creative ideas, the passion in life. But yeah, I'm very much aware of the darkness as well, and how much that can help. So I like that perspective.
We're going to just keep moving on for the sake of, honoring the time that we're here. So we'll jump into Earth, and you are that Earth person. It's your vibe, as you said. Tell the story when you were in Indonesia, and your mind got so excited about like what was happening, and what you perceived as opportunities, and they were opportunities, and yet your mind seemed to like run off like ahead, and your body was telling you to kind of slow down. It seemed to me that was kind of one of those aha moments where you went, wait a minute, I've got to make sure we realign what's happening here.
Yeah, I love it. It's exactly. It's like, this is a race car, and then this is like a human thing. And I suppose it was a time where I was figuring things out in my life, and then I was like, yeah, I know what's best for me now. I know a point where I was like, I know. The universe was like, you can sit down now. You have no idea what's going on. Like, you need to surrender, like another surrendering moment. So yeah, in my eyes, in my limited perspective, in my tunnel vision, it was like, this is perfect. So as I started to listen to my body, even though in the moment it just seemed so ludicrous, but for me, for whatever reason, I can't ignore my body. So some people are better at it than others, but I think I've been gifted this intense sensitivity, which didn't always feel like a gift, because of my extra sensitivity, I can help people, increase their sensitivity in their body. So for me, when I have a discomfort, a headache, like for that, it was just intense backache, and my whole body shut down. And that's what happens when I'm sick or feel unwell. And I didn't have a choice. I had to leave. So yeah, it was like my body has my back. It's almost like my body knows what's coming, or my body knows the bigger picture. And when I exhale and breathe into that, it's just much easier.
Was that the moment? When you really, got the idea that you have to listen to your body more closely, or had you always known it, but you learned it in some kind of a new way at that time?
Yeah, it was very much a progressive journey, this listening to the body. I got super interested in psychosomatics because I was studying psychology and the mind-body connection. So that was my I was in the mind, but I was aware of the mind-body connection. And then, like I was saying, with my intuition just bringing me around the world, I went to Indonesia and I did a yoga teacher training. So then I got introduced more to the energy body. How does energy flow? And then I moved to South Africa, and that was when I went into birthing. That was earth medicine. How does all of that side of the body work? And then the piece that connected all of these things together for me, the birthing, the energy body, the psychology, and these puzzle pieces that I just had accumulated, was when I went to a Vipassana meditation retreat, and I spent 10 days in silence with myself. And just like no TV, no books, no even notebook. Like, my notebook is my savior, and I did not have a notebook. I started talking to myself, going a little bit crazy. But that is a body scanning meditation retreat. So you essentially increase your sensitivity for 10 days. And after 10 days, I felt like I was floating, my body felt so light. And I learned how to shut my mind up and to really focus in on the wisdom of my body. So that tied it all together.
The healer in me sees the healer in you. Is that your tagline? Is that, it's a brilliant line, and I love it. So just when did that like gem come out of you? But the healer in me sees the healer in you. How did that come to be?
Oh, if I tried to describe where my thoughts come from, like I wouldn't get very far. But I suppose it's more a life motto for me, to be honest, because one of my main things about starting a business and building things was I didn't want to get unearthed in a sense of just getting taken away with the material things and money and doing things that I actually didn't feel aligned with. And same with relationships, like getting into relationships for an end goal. Like I wanted to avoid doing that, and I could see other people watching their journeys with businesses that had happened. So for me, that tagline, the healer in me sees the healer in you, just keeps everyone on a level playing field all the time. So even people that I'm coaching, if it's like a coaching relationship, it's like they're teaching me as much as I'm teaching them. And we're both just humans interacting. There's no like better or less than. So I think it's as I started to embrace the role of supporting people and guiding people on their journeys, I wanted that as a reminder more to myself, and then I just put it into the business so that I write it often.
No, I love it. It's a beautiful tagline. And if people want to get in touch with you, they should go to elementalempressmedicine.com. Who is the type of person that will benefit from, reaching out to you? If someone's listening and says, hey, I think I want to learn more. I mean, what kind of person do you, really connects with you and you're able to help?
Yeah, so people who have some trauma that they cannot budge, that they want to shift in their lives, and they want a deep way to do that. People who want to go on deep transformational journeys, essentially to find their purpose in life and to shine it out into the world. And as one goes through the coaching process, I do for 2 months or 3 months or 6 months, depending on what people need. And in that sense, they come to trust themselves on a very deep level. So if you would like to use your body as your compass, and connecting it with this intuitive guidance system, so that when a decision comes your way, or when you're thinking, should I create this or should I create that, you know what you want to do from yourself and not from the people around you. It's those kind of people. So it tends to be sometimes like entrepreneurs, sometimes people who have had a lot of trauma in their life. And sometimes women especially, that want to connect with their womb space and with their feminine nature. Like if their womb has been shut down by hormonal contraceptives for their whole life and they want to reawaken it, that's a great time to meet me, because it's like you can reawaken it and tune into the body, release your traumas, and move forward in life. So.
There are many other topics that we could go into much deeper, and maybe we'll have to have you back to do those. But to respect your time today, we're going to give you the last word. And I'll just say that please go ahead and visit Keeva at our website there at elementalempressmedicine.com. So thank you so much, Keeva.
Oh, thank you, Steve. It was wonderful talking. Yeah.
All righty. We'll see you again.
Bye.
Wow. So I know that Keeva had something she had to do at the top of the hour, so I wanted to get her out of here so she could go finish that up. We will see you tomorrow. And let's see, Darlene Ondi is going to join us, and she is a freedom fighter from Canada. And then next week, Tuesday, Denise Flood will be joining me, and she's going to introduce us to tapping here on the American Gumption Morning Show. And then Gwen Peterson on Friday, and we'll do a deep dive into her meditation philosophy. And that's it. I'll see you all tomorrow morning. Have a great rest of your day.